All right, let's talk about the Los Angeles Rams here for a little bit. This is a Rams football team trying their best to get back to the Super Bowl. They obviously won it 2 years ago last season due to some injuries and some unfortunate circumstances. Things kind of fell off quickly. This team still has a lot of key pieces, and the Rams have a strong chance to go back to where they once were just a short time ago. And there's some interesting news out of LA that I think Rams fans at first will be a little concerned, but I think is actually a great sign of a really smart move by the Rams organization. But before I get into that, Rams fans, I want to hear from you guys in the comment section below. Obviously, we're going to talk about some potential moves, some additions, subtractions involving the Los Angeles Rams this offseason. But let me know what one guy, whether it be player, coach, executive owner, whoever, is the quintessential Los Angeles Ram, the guy the Rams cannot get rid of no matter what. Let me know who you think that guy is in the comment section below. All right, well, obviously the Los Angeles Rams have a strong nucleus of star players. They're a very top-heavy roster, and that worked out well for them 2 years ago. It didn't work out so well last year when they had some injuries on some of those top-heavy players. Now, as we're heading into the offseason, the Los Angeles Rams have been linked to moving one of their star players off that roster, and this is according to Tom Pelissero, who put a tweet out. I'm going to read from the tweet here. The Rams have had trade talks about six-time Pro Bowl cornerback Jalen Ramsey, and league sources now believe it's very likely Ramsey is dealt with in the coming weeks. Ramsey, 28, is due $17 million in 2023 on a front-loaded deal that averages $20 million, and LA is clearing cap space. All right, Rams fans, at first, I'm sure you guys hear this and you're like, oh, are you kidding me? Are we going to a rebuild? Are we just blowing everything up? Are we going to go from Super Bowl 2 years ago to stinking, for the next few years as we just clear a bunch of cap space and get rid of all of our good players? No, that is not what it's doing here. Not what the Rams are doing here. I think the Rams are doing something very smart. Because the way the NFL is moving right now, we're seeing more and more teams get away from the classic standard two wide receiver formations, two running backs, one tight end, or two tight ends, one running back. Teams are moving away from that. In the olden days, so when I say olden days, like 10 years ago, teams would play a lot of two wide receiver formations, and what teams would do to try and counter that, they invest in a top flight corner like Jalen Ramsey. He would take care of one receiver, and then defenses could then roll safeties over, roll coverage over against the other receiver, and essentially blanket a team's passing game right out the gate. It was pretty simple. Nowadays, teams are moving to a lot more what's called 11 personnel. That's three wide receivers, one running back, one tight end. In fact, there's a lot more four wide receiver sets, and tight ends and running backs are becoming more and more part of the passing game each and every year. In fact, in 2021, 65% of all offensive groupings had more than two wide receivers. So think about that. So only 35% of the time, and keep in mind, there's a lot of situations, kneel downs, goal line, short yardage, teams just trying to kill the clock, where that's factored into it, where teams will go maybe two wide receiver sets or fewer, that kind of weights it really heavy to that side. It's not a realistic test case. So when most of the situations where, standard downs, passing downs, whatever it may be, the overwhelming majority of the time, like 75, 80% of the time, teams are lining up with three wide receivers. When you factor in tight ends and running backs, there's four, sometimes five legitimate passing threats. That removes a lot of the value of a shutdown elite corner. Right, because obviously if you just have a great corner who can take away one receiver, which Jalen Ramsey is, he's an outstanding player. I'm not doubting that at all. No one is doubting it. But the value of his position has gone down because even if he takes away one receiving threat, there's still 3-4 other guys. And there's no way you can roll coverages, to cover 3 or 4 different guys in that situation. So teams will be able to pick their poison no matter what it is. You'd rather have multiple quality, solid corners as opposed to one great corner. Or instead of having one great corner, you'd rather have a couple, elite or a couple really solid pass rushers, or some combination thereof, right? Having a lot of dollars invested in one top flight corner, it just doesn't make sense anymore. And to kind of prove that point, let me go to this according to overthecap.com. What you see here are the top 5 corners in the NFL in average per year cap hit. And I'll look at the teams they play for, right? You've got the Green Bay Packers, right? The Green Bay Packers in the last 31 years have had 2 Hall of Fame all-time great quarterbacks in Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, 2 total Super Bowl wins. Not a great organization. I don't care what people say. The Packers are not a smart organization. They'd have a lot more rings with that quarterback play if they were. You have the Cleveland Browns. I don't even have to say that the Browns are not a smart organization. You have the Rams, and then you have the Ravens, who were smart for a long time, but they have one playoff win since 2015, and the Lamar Jackson drama right now that's all come out. There's a lot of concern about how the Ravens have been managed the past few years. And then you have the New Orleans Saints, and now we're starting to see, how they manage their cap situation. They're always in a cap nightmare. That Drew Brees covered up a lot of warts. Sean Payton, Drew Brees covered up a lot of warts. So from a running an organization perspective, the Saints are not at the top of the list. So if you're the Rams and you look at that situation, you're like, I don't want to be with these guys that maybe aren't running their organizations the best way. I want to be with the smart teams, the guys that are doing things the smart way. You look at the Patriots under Belichick, right? They always bring in veteran corners for 1 or 2 year deals and get rid of them and move on. They have a corner like Malcolm Butler, like J.C. Jackson, who becomes a star player quickly. Instead of giving him a big deal, they move on. because he understands it's better to have a cadre, a group of solid corners, than to invest a lot of dollars in a single corner. Great example is a Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. They play a lot of rookies at corner. They have like one solid veteran corner. They don't have an elite corner on that entire team, and they really haven't had one for a number of years. And because they understand this rule here is that when you allocate a lot of dollars at the cornerback position, you don't have the money to spend at other corners, at safeties, at pass rushers. And then in today's day and age, and today's the way offenses play, it just puts you in a bad situation. The value just isn't there. Now, here's the other flip side of the coin of why I think this is a smart move for Los Angeles Rams, moving off Jalen Ramsey. Is he still a good player? According to PFF, he graded out overall an 86.4 last season. That's, for those who aren't familiar with PFF, anything in the 80s is like Pro Bowl, All-Pro. And he's been an elite level player. Jalen Ramsey is for a long time. So he is still good. He's still relatively young. He's 28 going on 29. So he's a young player. Still had a lot of good years left. And you'll be able to ship him off to some team that thinks they're just one corner away, like a Bengals, like a Giants, like a Vikings, that feel like they're one good defensive player away from being a Super Bowl contender, even though, like I just said, that's probably not the case. So they'll be able to ship Ramsey off and maybe even get a first-round pick. Maybe even get a couple second-round picks. Maybe just a lot of different draft assets while also clearing up cap space. So again, it's the classic thing. They can sell high here in a situation where it actually is better for the roster to divert the money to other areas instead of having it so concentrated at Jalen Ramsey at the cornerback position. So I know a lot of Rams fans, when I'm sure they first hear this news, are going to be like, oh, we're blowing it up. What are we doing? Not the case at all. Really smart decision by the Rams organization here. And if I was, as a Rams fan, if you go into this, you should view this as a smart move and a good sign going forward for Los Angeles Rams. I really mean it. This is probably the smartest move they made since they brought in Matthew Stafford a couple years ago. This is a great job by the Rams organization.